On Monday, two of Australia's biggest gold producers, Lihir Gold and Newcrest, will formally merge to forge a giant of global gold production, the fourth biggest in the world and one of the top 10 companies on the Australian Stock Exchange. Pivotal to this large and lucrative deal has been the high-profile economist Professor Ross Garnaut, who for 15 years has acted as chairman of Lihir Gold Limited, which operates one of the world's biggest gold mines on Papua New Guinea's Lihir Island. Perhaps best known as chairman of the Rudd government's Climate Change Review Panel, Ross Garnaut has in recent years urged Australians to take decisive action to reduce carbon pollution in the atmosphere. Ross Garnaut has simultaneously boasted Lihir Gold's environmental credentials, suggesting they are exemplary. But others claim such a suggestion could not be further from the truth. Business editor Greg Hoy reports.
The allure of gold continues to grow globally, with Australia now clearly ranked second in world production. But the glitter of gold has long lured Australian prospectors to the far distant hills of Papua New Guinea. Indeed, with initial backing of Australia's Export Finance Investment Corporation, Lihir Gold Limited, on the island of Lihir off PNG's north coast, has built one of the world's biggest gold mines over 15 years, under leadership of its founding chairman, Professor Ross Garnaut, AO, or Officer of the Order of Australia.
It's not very easy to find rich, new, pure gold assets.
Garnaut's Gold. Amidst the lush tropical splendour of Lihir Island, Ross Garnaut's company has struck El Dorado, deep in the crater of a 1,000-metre extinct volcano, which it's hoped will soon yield 1 million ounces of gold a year. For decades, the envy of global gold miners. But at what price? Unavailable for interview, Professor Garnaut, who's been paid around US $300,000 a year as chairman, has persistently boasted Lihir's low cost of production and high environmental standards.
The LGL board has always adopted responsible environmental management. Our environmental track record has been exemplary.
It cannot be said that the environmental record of Lihir is exemplary. In fact, it's shrouded in mystery.
Ross Garnaut has garnered support of the strongly pro-mining PNG government, whose environmental regulations are, to say the least, lax. But landowners of the Madang province, through lawyer Tiffany Nongur, are trying to block duplication of Lihir's environmental approach by other big miners in PNG. Though our requests for pictures and precise figures were simply ignored by the company. Each year, Lihir is known to dump millions of tonnes of its mine waste and chemically treated metalliferous tailings into the sea, replete with significant traces of cyanide and heavy metals.
The sea is impacted, but they're not releasing any of their information to the general public, and the only studies that we do have show major problems.
It's sort of out of mind, out of sight. The option is chosen mainly because it's a lot cheaper. So basically by dumping their mine waste into the ocean, Lihir Gold have been making more money, effectively.
Most of the studies by people that I know and respect do indicate that corals, fish and bottom animals are affected by the mine waste. And in the case of Lihir, this involves some 60 square kilometres of seafloor area.
No question, on little Lihir Island, Ross Garnaut has won support amongst locals.
LGL has been supportive in ensuring that the environment is looked after, both physical and social. And we also have seen the respect for our culture that has been demonstrated under the leadership of the chairman.
And no one's actually telling them that there could be problems. Generally, it's banned. It's banned in China. In Canada, where the practice was first, if you like, invented, it was conducted at some mines, but has since been banned. In the United States, it's banned.
I think it's enough to say that Professor Garnaut has made a lot of money out of mining.
Australian NGO, the Minerals Policy Institute, monitors the modus operandi of Australian mining companies overseas.
There's a critical credibility issue here, and not just for Ross Garnaut. Submarine tailings disposal is a very controversial method of disposing of waste, and I think it's controversial not just for the mining companies but also for the banks, and in this case it's the ANZ and the Commonwealth Bank of Australia who are actually supporting the companies that are involved in these practices in Papua New Guinea.
This sort of technology is frontier technology. Now, there have been a couple of studies done by the CSIRO. They quite clearly show that this deep-sea tailings placement has severely impacted the ecology of the area.
The senior and respected Australian marine scientist Dr. Greg Brunskill worries about the leaching of such mine waste into international waters known as the Coral Triangle, extending from the Solomons to eastern Indonesia.
The diversity of coral and fish and other kinds of marine animals is at a near global maximum. Disposal of waste into the Coral Triangle and into clean, clear blue waters of the Bismarck Sea is probably not a good thing. It endangers a very large tuna fishery, an international tuna fishery. It endangers food sources and cultural use of the coastal sea by the local villages.
Ross Garnaut is better known, of course, as an economics professor and environmental crusader. As chairman of the Rudd government's Climate Change Review Panel, he's urged Australians to act responsibly by cutting carbon pollution in the environment, remonstrating government for its lack of leadership on the issue.
The failure of our generation will haunt humanity until the end of time.
Unfortunately, Professor Garnaut's efforts on mining impacts and mining reform have been paltry. And really, if he'd done even half as much on mining reform, we wouldn't have anywhere near the problems we have today.
Professor Garnaut also serves as a director of the infamous Ok Tedi gold and copper mine in western PNG, which continues to discharge at least 56 million tonnes of metalliferous waste into the nearby river systems each year. When questioned about this 2 years ago, Professor Garnaut cited Ok Tedi's sulphur reduction efforts, but was pressed for time.
It's the most thorough and careful management of the environment that's ever been undertaken by a mining company.
But a management decision has let a huge amount of waste go down the river, Doctor.
I do have to get back to climate change. That's what I'm here for today. There's a lot of people waiting for me at another place. So very nice to see you, Stephen. Goodbye.
That river is going to be affected for 300 years or more. There's copper levels 800 kilometres away from the mine in the silt of the river, 3,000 times the safe levels. It's a moonscape.
Its copper and gold resource declining, Ok Tedi now produces around 16,000 kilos of gold a year. Lihir mine, on the other hand, will soon produce around 28,500 kilos, dwarfing other mines owned by LGL, whose chairman recently recommended acceptance of a lucrative $10 billion merger proposal by the Australian gold mining giant Newcrest Mining.
This Newcrest commitment of more than $10 billion, mostly for the Lihir asset, is a large vote of confidence in the Papua New Guinea investment environment.
Newcrest Mining, which formally takes charge of Lihir next week, says it won't comment either on the disposal of its waste at sea. But sensitivities are rising. The Chinese and Australian-owned Ramu nickel mine is now keen to mimic Lihir's tailings disposal by dumping 20 million tonnes of metalliferous waste at sea over 20 years. And yet another, the Perth-based Marengo Mining, keen to follow suit. So, as if to soothe increasing environmental concern, the PNG government agreed to a European Union-funded study on the impact of Lihir and the messy Misima mine mine which closed 8 years ago. That research, conducted by the Scottish Association of Marine Science, was completed in recent months but has not been released.
Unfortunately, the report has been kept secret. It's existed since May 2010, but the PNG government is desperate to keep it under wraps.
Documentation indirectly obtained by the 730 report shows the Scottish research team's lead scientist has recently stated
DSPT, or deep sea tailings placement, has major impacts on deep sea sediments and their biological communities. But there's presently no available information on long-term recovery rates. Tailings impoundments or dumps may need to be maintained for decades or even centuries after the mine has closed and the company dissolved.
They found that Misima hasn't recovered at all. There has been simply no ecological recovery since the dumping. So the same people that planned the dumping at Misima planned the dumping for Lihir.
It is a vexed issue, likely to haunt Ross Garneau, who will soon step down as chairman of Lihir Gold Limited, a company which, after many years of tax losses, commenced paying income tax to the PNG government this year.
When mining projects are well run, that is, safely, profitably, and with properly managed environmental and community impacts, they can produce significant returns for shareholders, can inject major benefits into local communities, and can provide opportunities for developing countries to improve their economies and societies.
Later on, we may find that it's a complete and utter disaster. Once it's out there, it's out there. The horse has bolted.
Nice timing for Ross Garneau to take a bow, having clinched for his company Lihir Gold a eureka $10 billion merger deal.
I thank you all for the opportunity to work with you over the years, and I wish you all well.
Leaving the protesters behind in his wake.
Tailings need to be stored on land where they can be monitored, and if it's not economic, well, the mining should be put off until it is economical.
Business editor Greg Hoy.